We read yesterday that Savitri is the lyric of love that waits through time. Like all high truths, love is a word which has been corrupted in the human consciousness, and what we understand by love is simply a horizontal extension of one ego into another ego, and absorbing each other, either destroying each other by that mutual absorption, or else forming a common front against other egos. This is our understanding of love. Surely such a love cannot save mankind. When Savitri speaks of love, it is the love that descends, comes from the highest and descends into the lowest reaches of matter, of the inconscient, to pull the divine consciousness within it progressively. In this sense, love becomes a yearning of the one for the one who is hidden in the depths of the inconscient, and the one who is self-aware above plunges to rescue. So this is the lyric of love. This is the love that Savitri comes and embodies. This is the love that can save and transform mankind and rescue earth. Yet when that love comes, earth nature responds in its own way. What it has, it gives to the Lord. What the Lord has, He gives to the earth. This is the transaction that has been going on. And where we stopped, just after that, there is a very touching passage. We have the great descents which have come to earth, and how earth responds to them. In the Indian myth, we hear about Rama descending and fighting the demons, winning the battles, literally removing the entire demonic civilization from a whole part of earth. But when he returns, his own subjects doubt him and doubt Sita and doubt their integrity. We have Krishna. Till date, people doubt him. Destroyer of clans, one who made people fight against each other. And of course, we have the example of Christ, one of the great descents of love, who is crucified, nailed to the cross. Socrates, who is served hemlock in return for his cry of freedom for mankind. This is Earth's response. In the very first canto, which is kind of a summary of the whole book, page 7, earth's grain that needs the sap of pleasure and tears, rejected the undying rapture's boon, offered to the daughter of infinity, her passion flower of love and doom she gave. A few lines below, hard is it to persuade earth nature's change. Mortality bears ill the eternal's touch. It fears the pure divine intolerance of that assault of ether and of fire. It murmurs at its sorrowless happiness. Almost with hate repels the light it brings. It trembles at its naked power of truth and the might and sweetness of its absolute voice. We hear about the ashramas being attacked in ancient times. I don't know, when as a child I read it, I found it very strange. Why would somebody attack an ashrama? It's much later that when I turned towards Aurobindo and the mother, I came to know that even Aurobindo ashram was attacked. Some of its departments torched down. This is the response of humanity. Aurobindo and the mother came in our midst to redeem earth, and the response they get right from things around them is hate and spite. One can't imagine, but this is what earth gives, because this is what earth has in it. And the divine accepts all this. He does not give up. He keeps pouring more and more love, as we saw yesterday. His way is, if there is a great resistance, there is a great love. If there is a greater resistance, there is a still greater love. If there is a greatest resistance, there is the greatest of love which he pours. Few lines below we have, too unlike the world she came to help and save. Her greatness weighed upon its ignorant breast. What is the fear that human beings have when they are face to face with the divine? Mother speaks of it in very simple words. The fear that human beings feel or experience when they are face to face with the divine is the fear of loss of their ego self, what they call as their individuality. They don't realize that by this surrender of the ego individuality, they will discover something far more beautiful, far more enduring, far more splendid, far more blissful. But there is a fear. It's strange. It is absolutely not at all something which can be rationally understood. This is the story of one of the ladies who first came to ashram. When she read, she came from some other place far away, other side of the globe. And when she read about Mother and Aurobindo and their works, she was absolutely enthused that this is the place. Auroville, this is the most happening place. I must go there. This is the ideal. And she comes to the ashram. She decides that she'll stay for a few days here before she goes to Auroville. And the mother is in a physical body. This is somewhere in 70 or 69. And she is told that you can go to mother and meet her and have a darshan. Such a simple thing. And suddenly she describes that I was filled with all kinds of resistances. Thoughts started coming to her, all kinds of suggestions. She is divine. What is the divine anyways? What have I got to do with the divine? She got married. How can she be divine? Why should I go and see her? All kinds of thoughts. Not for a day, she says, I was assailed for weeks with these thoughts. It's a very honest and candid description. And then, at some point, the resistance melted. And she agreed to just walk up to the mother. And she describes that moment when she is face to face. And that indescribable power in a frail and fragile body. In Savitri there is a line which describes that power in a fragile vase. And when she looked at her and held her hand, she felt crushed with that power, boring right into her soul. And she knew that for all eternity she belongs to her. This is the resistance, and the divine does not question. He does not care about it. His only response, because it's the only thing he has, is love. When someone asked mother about, do you get angry? She says, my child, I am incapable of getting angry with any one of you. The divine is incapable because he can give only love. But we give, and from its dim chasms welled its dire return, a portion of its sorrow, struggle, fall, to live with grief, to confront death on her road. The mortal's lot became the immortal's share. So, the divine avatar has to do a double work. The work of giving and the work of receiving. The work of preparing as well as the work of pouring. It's not a one-way work. It's not that the divine comes and gives and man receives. If it was like that, it would have been a very simple and beautiful work. Probably we have recounted this earlier, and it's well known much earlier when Aurobindo and the mother, the mother is asking, do you think the time has come? Is humanity ready? And Aurobindo says, if we have to wait for humanity to be ready, it will never be ready. We have to make it ready. They have become all this. So it's a double work in which the divine is engaged, which makes the work far more serious than we can ever imagine. It's not just that he comes and does some arbitrary miracles and goes away. He comes, on one side, he is identified or brings with him, deep within him, the highest embodiment. On the other side, in his human nature, and through that, he identifies with the deepest chasms so that he can fill that abyss with his love. And therefore, we have these lines on page 9, last two lines. All came back to her, earth and love and doom. These are the three coordinates of yoga. These are the three participants of yoga. Earth does the yoga. At its back, doom is pulling it on one side. On the other hand, love is pulling it on the other side. The mother says in very simple, beautiful words that what is divine love? She says it's like the leaven that the divine casts into the ferment of matter so that it can be kneaded and turn into tasty bread. How do we make bread? We first knead the dough, then we cast something in it, and that makes the bread swell, that makes the dough swell. So the divine love plunges itself into matter. It's a yoga of the earth. It's not so much about human. We have a very human-centric view. But there is a role of human in human. Because of the yoga of the earth, humanity, or rather earth consciousness, has reached a point where it can consciously participate in the yoga. Humanity is one of the offshoots of the yoga of the earth. It's a byproduct, if we may say so, or a fine flower, or maybe a poisonous fruit, we don't know, but it's a thing which has come out of the churning of the earth. It's one of the fruits of the yagna of earth. But this is a point where a great transition can take place. Within man, inconscient has become conscious. Within man, the superconscient waits for its hour. Within man, the finite is struggling to seek its own infinite. That is why man is always haunted by a restless urge. And Aurobindo in Savitri will write it very beautifully that he cannot find rest and peace till he unites these two within him. It's denied to man. Because within man he has become conscious of both these elements. On one side, there is the known below him. On other side, there is the unknown above him. Man is the meeting point of the known and the unknown. He is the meeting point of ignorance and knowledge. This is the drama of man. Nevertheless, the yoga is being done for earth nature, and humanity can have the proud privilege of consciously participating in this yoga and becoming an instrument for the great transformation. But should humanity refuse its fate, it can be cast aside like many other forms before it. But the yoga of the earth will go on. Aurobindo writes in one of his letters, it is the earth that will be saved. Even in one of her prayers, the mother speaks of earth being saved. Earth will be saved. Of course, we are egoistically identified with humanity, so we immediately in our mind it translates as humanity will be saved. Humanity should be saved because it's such a labor, after so much of labor, millions of years, humanity has come into fruition. So it will be beautiful, it will make the process so much shorter if the yoga can be fulfilled in humanity. The yoga of earth, which is going on for millenniums and millenniums and trillenniums, it will be so beautiful if man can become the conduit to arrive at the grand fulfillment for the yoga. But if not, the dolphins are waiting. Who knows? So this is the yoga of the earth in which divine is engaged. So that comes back to Savitri. Now, in the very first canto, Aurobindo links the images of the night and the day of previous avatars and descents. And now he says, this too, just as there have been previous descents, Savitri too is a descent of the Divine Mother who has come to intervene and save. This embodiment of the divine, not only working as in absentio, but taking a human body. In fact, in the Indian mythologies, we hear the divine takes even animal bodies, even the body of fish. This embodiment of the divine to save earth is a great revelation which Savitri brings so close to us. That there is love, divine love hidden at the base of creation. At the bedrock of this creation, what holds it is love. At the peak of creation, what attracts it is love. At the middle of creation, what helps it, what descends and embodies itself is love. And that is why there is hope. Hope is not because of so many charitable institutions all around the world. Hope is not because of us. Hope is not because of so many Babas and Mahants and priests. Hope is because there is love. And Savitri comes to embody that love. At the other side, she has to face the doom. All came back to her, earth and love and doom. The ancient disputants encircled her. These are the three fellows. Earth is the wrestling ground and love and doom are wrestling. This is the only wrestling match going on. And earth is the meeting point. And they use different forms and figures to wrestle and win or lose. Now this wrestle is going on in the human form. It has reached that point where in human beings, in humanity, there are those who represent largely the doom side of creation, who would love to see creation sink into the abyss. And there are those who come armed with a love that is willing to heal the abyss. And of course, there are not some who are on this side and some who are on that side. All of us simultaneously embody the love and the doom. But Savitri embodies it in its grim earnest, in its totality. And who will decide the wrestling match? Who is the winner? This is the beautiful part or the difficult part. Who will decide that in wrestle of love and doom, who is going to win? The divine is very generous. So he says, all right, let the inconscient decide. Now, inconscient is absolutely biased. He is the most biased, partial referee you can ever have. And he sits and decides for the match. When he says, yes, you have won, then I have won. So he does all kinds of false, fraud. Even when love is winning, it will say, no, you didn't, you conceded a point. So there we have these lines on page 10. A guardian at the somber center of the dire debate. Who is sitting at the somber center? A guardian of the unconsoled abyss, inheriting the long agony of the globe. A stone still figure of high and godlike pain stared into space with fixed regardless eyes that saw grief's timeless depths but not life's goal. This stone still figure, the figure of inconscient, which knows nothing except collapse and chaos. It knows nothing but disintegration. It knows nothing but suffering, because every time it has woken up, it's with suffering. Mother speaks of it in the yoga of the cells. She says, one big difficulty I am facing with these cells that they just don't have faith. And then she describes why. Because the entire evolutionary journey is through suffering and pain, suffering and pain. So when you tell them that, look, you can open with trust to the divine grace and it will make everything wonderful, they just don't have faith. They just don't believe it is possible, because they have inherited. Each cell carries within itself the imprint of millions of years. The entire struggle is embodied here. And that, of course, incidentally, is the significance of Sri Aurobindo's relics, because he embodies not only the struggle but the consummation. For a change, there are cells which thrill with that ecstasy. Otherwise, the human cell, as it is constituted, inherits the sense of the struggle. Nothing can be done just by grace. There are laws and processes and habits. So, this inconscient will sit and decide, afflicted by his harsh divinity, bound to his throne, he waited unappeased the daily oblation of her unwept tears. All the fierce question of man's heart relived. What is this fierce question? Why there is life if it has to die one day? Why there is love if it has to turn into hate one day? Why there is creation if it has to collapse into disintegration one day? This is the question that man lives each moment and tries to find his own solution in his own way. All the fierce question of man's hours relived, the sacrifice of suffering and desire, earth offers to the immortal ecstasy. There is a yagna going on, and what earth is doing? All the blood, it's known in that, Kali, to appease Kali, there is a sacrifice. There is a sacrifice of blood, of the ego. And then a point comes when Kali is appeased. The immortal ecstasy. All the sacrifice of suffering and desire. So much that has happened on earth. So many civilizations have come and been wiped away. So many beautiful stories have turned into pain. So much that saw hope eventually sank into despair. All that suffering earth has somewhere in its atmosphere. And all that it seeks and desires, still in spite of all that, through these two means, there is a subconscious yoga that goes on earth. Suffering and desire. Suffering which makes the earthly embodiment fit and strong. Subconscious yoga. Desire that seeks in spite of the pain, in spite of the collapse. Every day we see people die, yet all of us seek immortal life. Every day we see love turning into bitterness. All these stories all around us, divorce rate is very high. But love continues to throb in the human heart. This is the beauty of earth. This is the subconscious yoga, that something in earth doesn't give up. The sacrifice of suffering and desire. In this yagna, these are two things. Through both means, we move towards that immortal ecstasy. And earth is waiting when that hour will come, when the immortal ecstasy will say, enough is enough. Now I bless you. And there will be no more pain, no more struggle. It's offering. So, who comes to tilt the balance in its favor? Began again beneath the eternal hand. The divine himself comes and says, okay, let me see how much more is required to fill the inconscient abyss. And he comes and pours himself into creation. This is the story of Savitri, the story of love. And what is the issue we have in the very next canto? What really is the problem? What really is the difficulty? And there we see that in the issue itself, taking the symbol of humanity, humanity is a symbol of that in which this high transition can be worked out. But why is it not possible? Why is it that after we have known that this is truth, yet we are all the time drawn back again and again into the same old accustomed ways? It's a fact. There is a little write-up of the mother, an advice to newcomers. This is, she wrote for those who come to ashram, and she says they come impelled with their psychic in front. You know, when first time people come, what a joy, what a enthusiasm. Oh, this is it. This is what must be done. They are filled with love, gratitude, surrender. By and large, not talking of the casual tourist, but they also feel something. And there is the enthusiasm. And then she says, when people come with that stage, everything looks beautiful. The dining room food is very nice. The people you meet are wonderful. Everything looks superb. Then she says, then they stay here for some time. And after some time, the old nature comes out. So the same dining room food, they say, nowadays is getting bland. Or if there are rasgullas, again there is a complaint. Either ways there is a complaint. Either it is too bland or it's too sweet. Because to complain we must. So the old human nature comes out. And this nothing is like. The same human beings who appeared like an embodiment of saintliness appear demonic. The same. It's so strange. And the mother says, this happens because the old nature comes out. It's not because people are good or bad. They are the same. They were the same people. There is a beautiful line in one of these scriptures that we look into the world based on our own basic faith. As we are within, so we find the world. When we are in a psychic state, we are full of goodwill, generosity, broadness, health. But when that is clouded and the old nature comes, the same things and the same we change. And we are back into our usual self. Now this happens because it's not a fault or an error. It's because this world is built on a plan of oneness. We think things are separated. My present is separated from my past and the future. But is it really so? This life is separated from my previous life and the coming life. But is it really so? I am separated from others. People cut connection and they turn away and they file a legal lawsuit. Of course, law separates. But even in psychology we know that there is something called as a legal separation and something called as an emotional separation, which is far more difficult. And what about spiritual separation? Whatever elements with which we are linked, they continue. So we are in a certain sense linked with everything. With the entire past, it lurks within us. In some narrow bylanes, in some corridors, in some passages, it lurks and constantly takes different forms and names and comes in our front. This is the issue, the big problem, which makes any upward effort so difficult. It's very beautiful to read about yoga. It's very easy to talk about yoga. It's very, very easy to have seminars on yoga. It's easiest to have conferences on yoga, write books on yoga and publish volumes on yoga. All this is very easy. It's very, very, very difficult to take one single solid step towards yoga. And that is what is required. Why? Here we have on page 12, for only the unborn spirit's timeless power can lift the yoke imposed by birth in time. The moment we are born in time, we become subject to many, many things, many laws, many habits, many patterns. The very fact of birth into the body is a birth into ignorance. This sheath is thick. When the soul descends, it cannot see, because it's a thick, opaque sheath. It's like wearing very dark glasses and trying to find your way. Only the self that builds this figure of self can raise the fixed, interminable line that joins these changing names, these numberless lives, these new oblivious personalities, and keeps still lurking in our conscious acts the trail of old forgotten thoughts and deeds. Disown the legacy of our buried selves. Somebody should write a book on this. We have a book called Many Selves. What about our buried selves, which are there? Our own past lurks within us. Just because we are ignorant doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because I don't know what I did in my childhood, well, psychologists tell us that those childhood memories are still there. And they even influence us. They are there in our subconscious and they influence us. So mechanically, even in our food habits, they are there. In everything, they are there. So, how much more these past personalities which linger? This is the difficulty. The issue is being placed before us, the problem of the yoga of the earth. Each step you take is a battle, because the entire past resists. It says, no, how can, this is true, that is not true. Then you pull it out and place it there. Now that becomes the bar, interminable line. Now the bar is humanity. This is the highest. How can there be anything above that? The burdensome hardship to our vanished forms, accepted blindly by the body and soul. An episode in an unremembered tale. Its beginning lost, its motive and plot concealed. A once living story has prepared and made our present fate child of past energies. This is not a question of reward and punishment. Aurobindo several places tells us karmic law is not about reward and punishment. It is unfortunately the natural consequence of the way this earth has been created. There is separation on the phenomenal level, but in the depths there is no real separation. There is oneness. You cannot separate. It's all part of an illimitable plan. And we all carry our own bygone selves within us. And they lurk. In fact, he is telling us, accepted blindly by the body and soul. Probably if we were given a choice, that's, our past personality came up and we were asked, would you like to accept it? We may say no. Or maybe yes, if we see ourselves a king, who knows. But we would have also seen what it means to be a king. How alone you are. How bound you are. That, all that is lurking inside. And on top of it, the fixity of the cosmic sequences. Fastened with hidden inevitable links. These links are hidden. It's not easy to get across to them. She must disrupt, dislodge by her soul's force her past a block on the immortal's road, make erased ground and shape anew her fate. If it is possible in one human being, it is possible in others. That's what in the previous canto, we missed out plenty of lines. One of the lines is where it is said on page 9, page 8 rather, against the evil at life's afflicted roots, her own calamity its private sign. Savitri is representative, the avatar is a representative of humanity. What he accomplishes within his consciousness becomes easy for others to accomplish. This is what the avatar does. what he establishes within one consciousness becomes possible for other human consciousnesses. So Savitri must find a way to get rid of the entire karmic load and yet continue to be an embodied being. This is the difficulty. The difficulty is not of escaping from earth. Saints do that. There is a way to annul the karmic burden, is to take the soul out of the embodiment of nature and lose it into the infinite and the eternal, and drop this nature like a robe, and all the karmas and the sanskaras, etc., remain as part of the earth's common legacy. In fact, they lighten their burden and increase the earth's. But here is something else. She must disrupt. Satyavan must be embodied Satyavan in flesh and blood. He must be rescued from death, not just his soul. If it's a question of rescuing his soul, it's still an easy task. The struggle in Savitri is to rescue an embodied being. Now, if an embodied being has to be rescued from inevitable death, that means the entire chain of cause and effects must be altered and annulled. So this is what Savitri has come to do, and if it can be done in one, it can be done in all. Few lines below, this is further elaborated. Altered must be nature's harsh economy. One remembers the story of a sage, Mandavya. Some thieves have stolen some jewels from the king's palace and are running away. And the king's people are after them. So these thieves, don't know what to do, and suddenly they see this sage absorbed in meditation. So they throw all the jewels by his side and run further. So meanwhile, the king's army and soldiers, they reach there and they see the jewel, they recover it, and they immediately catch hold of the sage. They say, "You are trying to close your eyes and think you are going to fool us? You thief, come with us." The sage doesn't say anything. He just follows them. And even if he says or would have said, who would have listened? The nature of police is everywhere the same. So anyways, he is taken, and the king, by then it's late evening, and the king hears that the thief has been caught and the jewels have been recovered, and he orders an execution. So as was the law those days, execution had a strange way that you were put on a bed of nails. So by morning, nobody can survive. So he is thrown on the bed of nails. So morning when they come to take out his dead body, they see the sage is sitting on that bed of nails and meditating again. So he is pulled out and they are shocked. How could he survive? So they rush to the king and say, "A strange thing has happened." So when the king hears it, he comes running. And then he recognizes the sage. He says, "You fools, you have told he is a thief, but he is a sage." Anyways, he falls on the feet of the sage and says, "Please forgive me." So the sage doesn't even look at the king and starts walking. He again says, "Sir, please forgive me. I am ignorant." He says, "I know you are ignorant. What are you asking forgiveness for?" The king says, "I am the one because of whom you had to suffer all night." He says, "Oh, you think you are so important? Because of you I had to get suffering. I think you need to check yourself. Anyways, don't bother. I have to move on." So he says, "Where are you going?" The sage says, "I am going to the one because of whom I had to suffer whole night." The king once again says, "I am the one." He says, "No, don't bother. You go back to your palace." King is perplexed. He says, "Then who is this?" He says, "I want to ask death why I had to suffer whole night this way." So he goes to the realm of death, and death comes out. Such is the power of his tapasya. And he says, "Why you allowed this?" Because death is the guardian of the darker worlds, and he decides what goes on these realms. Just like Surya is the guardian of the sunlit worlds, death is the guardian of the dark worlds, the fallen worlds, the worlds of mind and life and matter. So death says, well, so many births back, you had pierced a butterfly with a needle. Now it's sage's turn to be furious. He says, what kind of a law you have? Because a butterfly is pierced with a needle, I have to suffer a whole night on a bed of nails? With all the power of my tapasya, I change this law. This is the harsh economy. It's not something very good. We speak of karmic law as something very nice. God will punish. This is not a nice thing. If this were not there, probably the evolution would have been much swifter. But it is there. There is a purpose behind it. Here Sri Aurobindo would not tell us, but later he would tell us the purpose. But right now he says, altered must be nature's harsh economy. Acquittance she must win from her past's bond. An old account of suffering exhaust. Strike out from time the soul's long compound debt. Every time you have done some mistake in the past, according to the karmic law, that makes you commit the same mistake this time. Maybe you learn a little more, but now because of this fresh mistake, a fresh account, so it becomes like a compound debt. A little you exhaust, but more you accumulate. So at this rate, probably evolution will become retrogressive. So she has to change all this. This is a harsh economy. And the heavy servitudes of the karmic gods, the slow revenge of unforgiving law, and the deep need of universal pain, and hard sacrifice, and tragic consequence, all this she has come to change. Out of a timeless barrier she must break. Penetrate with her thinking depths the void's monstrous hush. Look into the lonely eyes of immortal death, and with her nude spirit measure the infinite night. It's not just one person's karma or two persons' karma or a few disciples' karma that the mother has come to cancel. She has come to cancel the karma of the earth. And one sign of it, in fact not one sign, there are quite a few signs. One sign is, today's children carry very little burden of the past, the good and the bad. Strangely, somebody has lifted a big load and just washed it clean. Sri Aurobindo writes in one of his early letters that I would prefer to make a clear ground for the new creation to come up. So we'll probably see a more collapse because the entire ground has been made clear. Again we see the karmic debts of long forgotten deeds, collective deeds of mankind, national level, at the level of religious and other levels. They are all being suddenly springing up to notice and seeking reconciliation. That is the beauty. And before they seek reconciliation, there will be a conflict. Conflict, crisis and change. This is the way the divine works. So he brings all these karmic debts of group souls, of national psyche, and they are brought to consciousness and they come into conflict. The crisis deepens, as we see now happening in so many places, and we lose hope. But we must say, probably the light is just round the corner and reconciliation is very close at hand.